In my last video, we dug into the question why smart people fall for cults and high control religions like the Jehovah's Witnesses. And if you haven't seen that video yet, I highly recommend that you check it out next because it is essentially part one of today's video being part two. So I'll go ahead and place a clickable card that'll pop up on your screen in the last 20 seconds of this video. And again, I do recommend you check that out next, as this video and that video kind of go together. We're going to go in a different direction today because you see, for many people, for many active Jehovah's Witnesses who are starting to have doubts, for many ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, the question isn't how did I fall for this religion? It's why did I allow myself to stay so long, usually so many years, after I realized something was wrong. And can we just be honest? We all know that there are many witnesses who know that there are serious problems with the religion, who stay for life and never leave. And again, this is what ties back into the first video, where we discussed the fact that cults are designed, high control religions are designed to target highly intelligent people, despite the fact that there's a misconception that only gullible people fall for cults. It's actually the exact opposite. Likewise, remaining in a cult even years after you've awakened to the fact that something is off is not a sign of gullibility, naivety, or stupidity, or anything synonymous with that. It's all about human nature and psychology and understanding the way the human brain works. It's primitive survival, literally, and that's all it is. I have spent an exorbitant amount of time dwelling over these two questions. Why do smart people fall for cults, and why do smart people stay in long after they start to see red flags? I'm a prime example. Now, I was never baptized as a Jehovah's Witness. I was a 14-year Bible study off and on. I had drug addictions. I had problems that kept me from progressing to baptism. Well, for that 14 or so years, I was 100% convinced that the Jehovah's Witnesses were the only true religion, and any shortcomings, any failures, I blamed on myself, not the organization. And even long after I started to see massive, and I do mean massive, red flags, I stayed coming back. I stayed believing in it. I refused to go to family reunions because they were held in churches. I didn't get to see my grandparents before they died because of my convictions about Jehovah's Witnesses being the true religion. You know, I didn't call my family members for their birthdays, and we became very distant over the years because they just didn't understand why I stopped going to Thanksgiving, why I stopped going to Christmas. You see, that is why I'm making this video, because I have figured out the answer to these questions. And I'll give you a little hint, a little spoiler here. Smart people don't remain in cults after they awaken because they're not capable of seeing the contradictions. They do. The reason why people remain in cults, even when they know something is wrong, is because the brain is made to avoid pain at any cost. And let's be honest, leaving the Jehovah's Witnesses, or I would assume pretty much any cult or high control religion, comes at a tremendous cost of pain. So in today's video, I'm going to pull back the curtain on the psychological machinery that keeps people trapped in cults long after their mind wakes up, but their life can safely follow. Now, if you were a Jehovah's Witness, or maybe you still are a Jehovah's Witness, think about everything that you have sacrificed and given to your religion. We're talking about years of preaching, years of studying, years of faithfully attending the meetings at the Kingdom Hall, years of convincing others to join your religion, and literally shaping your entire identity, your entire lifestyle, your family choices, career choices, education choices. Everything you are has been shaped around your commitment to this organization, in many cases for years or decades. The sunk cost fallacy is the belief that because you have invested so much into something, you cannot walk away from it now. No matter how much you've been duped, no matter how bad the situation has become. You are too invested to quit now, right or wrong. But let's be clear, this doesn't stop at just keeping you sitting in your seat at the Kingdom Hall. Psychologists have found that the more an individual has invested in something, the more they will double down on it. Think about the Prince of Nigeria scam that happened many, many years ago, for those of you who are old enough to remember. Even after it became public knowledge that this was a scam, many of the people who had already sent money continued to send money. And essentially, it's that same exact principle that often keeps people stuck in cults. It's the sunk cost effect. I've invested too much to admit that I might be wrong. I've invested too much to back out even if I am wrong. The pain of backing out now would be more than staying in, right or wrong. And that leads to a more intense pattern called escalation of commitment. Put simply, the more you sacrifice for something, the harder it becomes to admit that you might have been wrong. And then, of course, to correct course and put an end to it. Okay? This is just a human part of our existence, part of our brain. It doesn't make us stupid. It's just how it is. Like for me, when I was younger, my very first girlfriend, when I was 18 years old, she was a whore. You know, I mean, she was sucking you know what in guys' cars. She was cheating on me, playing me like a fool the whole time. And I was in love. And I put this girl on a pedestal. And she was literally good for nothing. And I look at her today. She's old. She's fat. Nobody wants her. Well, I'll just leave it at that. And there is a little bit of gratification there because now that I'm older, the younger girls kind of like me. So it's like, all right, like how the universe works. Just wait a while and things will fix themselves. But I digress. I don't want to rant too much, okay? And I have a tendency to do that. During those times where this girl was using me and cheating on me and everybody else could see it and she was making a fool out of me, I think I could see it. I just didn't want to admit it because I needed this to be real. I needed that relationship to be what I thought that it was, what I had invested into it to make it. I could not accept that I had wasted all this time and love and energy on this girl, that she wasn't the one. I couldn't do it. I could not bring myself to admit it because I wasn't there psychologically yet. And that is the same pattern that keeps people stuck in cults and high control groups like the JWs, long after they realize something is off. Let's face it, nobody likes to admit that they've been fooled. And that makes it damn near impossible for a witness or a cult member to ask those questions that could potentially destroy the foundation of everything that they've built their lives upon. Was any of this real? Was all of this just a lie? Most people cannot handle the weight and implications of seriously considering those two questions. Because although everybody claims to love the truth and want the truth, the fact of the matter is, if you look closely, most people spend their entire lives building up walls to keep the truth out. They live in their own little bubbles, and they don't want anything or anyone that might otherwise accidentally or intentionally pop their bubbles to come anywhere close. They can't handle the discomfort and psychological shock of confronting the reality that everything they believed in very well might be wrong. They feel safe in their bubbles. And it's much easier to put your head down and just keep going, jumping through the hoops, going through the motions, than to lift your head up and actually look in the mirror. Because when you start to wake up, the truth is now against you. And the truth threatens your entire existence. It threatens your sense of self, your purpose, your relationships, all the decisions you've made over the years, pretty much your entire life story. So their brains do what human brains naturally do when something is too painful to admit. It pushes the doubts aside, it silences the questions, and it convinces you that you're the problem, not the doctrine, not the cult, not the religion. That is not stupidity. That is the human brain in survival mode. And this is where another psychological force kicks in called cognitive dissonance, where you experience the mental agony of holding two conflicting ideals at the same time. So, on the one hand, you realize that you're starting to have doubts. But on the other hand, you also realize that your entire existence depends on those doubts not being real. And that tension is excruciating. So you have a vested interest in making sure that those doubts are not true. And the brain will bring about that reality, which creates a bubble. And you step into that bubble. Because, of course, your bubble is not reality. But I understand why you do it because your brain is trying to protect you from the pain of admitting that you were wrong and having to look in the mirror. Now, let's talk about the biggest, most heartbreaking force of all, the social death that occurs when individuals realize that this religion isn't what I thought it was. I have to make a decision. Do I stay or leave? And I know that if I leave, I'm going to have a complete social death. I'm going to lose everybody. And if you're a Jehovah's Witness, that could mean your spouse, your parents, your relatives, your aunts, uncles, cousins, etc. It could mean your siblings, your brothers, your sisters. It could mean your children, all of your friends, the people whom you've been closest to for years, the people who you go out to eat with, the people who you have over to your home for fellowship. You're about to lose all of that, a complete social death, if and when you pull the trigger on leaving the religion. And human beings are wired for connection. And losing your community and going through a complete social death registers in the brain the exact same way that physical danger does. Often when witnesses stay or when, somebody else stays in a cult, it's not because they love the doctrine or they love the leadership, they love the religion, they agree with every choice that they make. They stay because they're choosing their family. They're choosing their children, they're choosing their parents, they're choosing their relationships, they're choosing their stability. This fear is not abstract and it lives in the nervous system, so it kicks in before your brain ever has a chance to register. You start breathing heavier, your heart starts beating faster, you start to feel afraid. You're about to lose everything. That's how the brain works. The fear isn't abstract, it's personal. Like I said, if I leave, I'm going to lose everything. I'm going to lose everybody. My children might be weaponized against me by the religion. And from a psychological standpoint, this is called attachment theory. The group becomes your attachment figure. And slowly, you form dependency loops where the organization essentially becomes the mediator for all of your emotional needs. And the thought of leaving would feel like emotional suicide. So, what do people do? Well, they stay alive by staying in. And that is how millions of Jehovah's Witnesses become PIMO. PIMO, physically in, mentally out, sitting in the Kingdom Hall with their Bibles open and their minds completely somewhere else. Not because they're weak, not because they're stupid, because they are human. And another powerful reason why people will stay in a cult or a high control group like the JWs is because of identity. You don't just belong to Jehovah's Witnesses. You don't just attend Jehovah's Witnesses meetings. You don't just go to Jehovah's Witnesses church. You become one. You learn to talk like a witness. You dream like a witness. You plan like a witness. You think like a witness. You live your entire life as a witness. It's your identity. All of your big life milestones happen inside the organization. Your baptism, your first talk, pioneering, privileges, ministerial roles. Your entire sense of identity gets tied into the religion. Psychologists call this phenomenon identity foreclosure, where your ideals and values are handed to you before you ever have a chance to build them for yourself. So when doubts begin to break through the surface, The idea of potentially leaving doesn't just feel like changing religions. You're not just going from the Baptist church to the Methodist church. You are literally killing everything you've ever known. You're killing the version of yourself that you have spent years, maybe your whole life, creating. And then there's role loss. Because again, as a Jehovah's Witness, your entire identity is wrapped up in who you are in the kingdom hall. Elders, pioneers, circuit overseers, ministerial servants, regular publishers, part time publishers. You're not just losing your belief system, you're losing your role, your value, your sense of identity, your status, your purpose, your worth, your self esteem. Most people don't just walk away from who they are and everything that their existence is built upon. Not easily, not quickly. Now, I think there's another art that we need to tie into this story, and Jehovah's Witnesses will recognize this immediately. It is the persecution narrative. And this might be the most manipulative psychological play, or one of them, that the Jehovah's Witnesses use. Every hypocrisy, every policy shift, every scandal, every government ban is framed that the Jehovah's Witnesses are God's chosen religion. Evidence against becomes evidence for, not because the evidence supports it, but because your brain has been conditioned to interpret all pushback against your faith as persecution or validation that you are God's chosen people. Because let's face it, the Bible promises that God's people will be persecuted. So look, we're being persecuted. Duh. Proof we're God's people, obviously. It's called the immunization effect. It is a tool that's used by the witnesses in many cults. You are taught to expect persecution. You are trained that the world is going to attack you because God has separated you as his chosen people, and the world always attacks God's chosen people. So when this happens, the cognitive trap snaps in place. See, that proves we're right. You're not being irrational, you're following a learned pattern. You have been conditioned to interpret reality in favor of the organization. And that makes it incredibly difficult to walk away, not just intellectually, but psychologically and physiologically, because again, our nervous system reacts before our brains kick in. Because as a Jehovah's Witness or as any cult member, you have been conditioned physically to respond to doubt and criticism with fear, with anger, with emotion. This is fear conditioning, deliberate phobia indoctrination. And that is why Jehovah's Witnesses experience real panic at the thought of doubting, criticizing, questioning, leaving, reading apostate material, or even just exploring outside ideas. Your body was trained to fear, your nervous system was trained to react long before you have ever had a chance to even taste it. So when you had that sudden surge of panic or guilt or dread, that's not God telling you that you're wrong. It was a sign that your nervous system was still inside the religion even after your brain had checked out. The physical fear response is not stupidity, it's trauma. And then there's one more chain that keeps people inside long after the doubts arrive, and it's called hope. Let's be honest, being in the Jehovah's Witnesses isn't all bad. There are some good sides to it. And the religion doesn't just offer an extensive list of rules that thou shalt not violate, it also offers hope for the future. And when a system offers you something that emotionally powerful, walking away isn't just changing your beliefs, it's throwing out something that you've invested all of your hope into for all of these years. It's losing the future that you've been holding on to your entire life or however many years you've been in the religion. And letting go of that imagined future feels like a betrayal of yourself It feels like a betrayal of your loved ones who have died that you hope to see again someday. It feels like a betrayal of the people whom you've loved, of the sacrifices that you've made, and the version of yourself that you hoped you would become. Hope is usually the last chain to break, and for many people, it's the hardest one. But eventually, for those of us who leave, something begins to happen. Not a lightning bolt, not a single moment, but a thousand little realizations that slowly begin to outweigh the fear. Leaving a high control group isn't impulsive, it's the culmination of courage, intelligence, honesty, and integrity. And recovery truly begins at the moment when you stop asking, "Why did I stay?" and start asking, "What do I need to do now?" That is the moment that your life officially begins.